Hi, it's Michael and Anthony here presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for the current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, with Anthony Turner from the Small Business Mentoring Service, we'll interview a different small business expert or a fellow business owner and get them to share their best tips and insights for you, the listeners. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. Thanks also to our supporters, Kerr Capital and the Small Business Mentoring Service. Okay, so welcome to today's edition of Small Business Banter Radio. Marnie Roberts from WineGrapes is with us today. Marnie is a winemaker, but in addition, she's in charge of a cooperative of wine growers, and that's what we're going to talk about today, that cooperative model of making wine. Marnie, pleased to have you in. Thanks for making time.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. Hi, Anthony. How are you both? Good?
Yeah. Excellent, thanks.
And Anthony Turner from the Small Business Mentoring Service. Marnie, you're a winemaker by trade, but can you give us a couple of minutes on your background leading up to what attracted you to the to WineGrapes and the model of growing on behalf of a collective of wine grape growers?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I grew up over in Mildura, which is the top part of Victoria, and as I grew up on an apple orchard and then citrus, from dried fruit to then wine grapes towards the end, and hated everything off the land because, you had to work after school. But I was always surrounded by the co-ops, the old school co-ops, the growers getting together, back in the 80s and 90s and things like that. And then as I left school, I got a job in a winery to try and earn some money to travel. I wanted to travel overseas and found that if I did a vintage each year, I could travel. And in doing that, started to fall in love with the whole winemaking or the wine industry, and having the background of being I guess what they call over there, a blockie's daughter, understanding from the grower's point of view, a lot of it, rather than from a corporate or a winemaking point of view. So throughout probably the last, so that's, 25 years, been slogging along in the industry, and one of the general manager of WineGrapes approached me for a job. So I'd worked with her for about 10 years on and off through other various things, and this job came up, and I was just really attracted to it. It really works around what I do for myself, but also the ethos of it, working for a collective of, it's about 120 growers now. It's quite large, and making wine for them rather than for the company, I guess. So that's sort of how it all happened, quite naturally.
Yeah. So you're grown up around cooperatives, which, as we discussed, I think yesterday when we had a chat, it's an old business model, but one that is sort of I think it's in a resurgence. But we particularly link that to, you're based in regional South Australia,
yes,
and a lot of our audience is based in the regional areas. So we'll come back to the cooperative, but what I understand it to, some of the benefits to be, is that you're supporting local people, local growers, and local communities. So is that one of the key things for you, that there's it's not big corporate, it's supporting the community, the town?
Oh, absolutely. Being I live in Clare Valley. I'm a regional girl, and live out in Blythe, actually, which is even a smaller town out of Clare, about 300 people. And I think it's really important when you live somewhere or grow something or a part of a production of it, it needs to go back to where it's come from, and that just goes really at the heart of everything as well. So I work a lot with growers over the last years anyway. It's really important to get that right, and it goes back into the land and all that effort, and then you reap the rewards from that. So without that link and going back to the community, there's no point really.
Yeah,
So.
and are you seeing, over the how long have you been with WineGrapes for?
I've been with them for a couple of years now.
Yeah,
yeah.
And is the supply side of things changing? You're seeing more smaller local growers activate and get involved, or was it a case of this is a better option for them than they might have previously had in terms of selling and growing, making wine? Sorry.
Well, I think the reach is further, so they have more access to a lot more opportunities than they would if they went out by themselves. There's quite a vast array of skill sets within the business itself, and also it creates this network of the growers communicating with each other. So that's sort of really important as well, is linking up that network within the network. So smaller growers see that they're together, they've got more pull, but also they can lean on each other a bit more as well. So that's probably the important thing about it as well.
So, Marnie, with the cooperative process, you're talking about the growing side of things. Does this come together and in terms of the individual growers come up and they come up with blended products, or do they sort of all individually labelled and they market themselves? So how does it work in sort of that broader context of the co-op? A bit like the old ADFA in around Mildura for many years. That sort of style. Is it that sort of style where lots of individual products, or is it sort of more blended?
I guess so. What the company WineGrapes offers is two aspects, and the wine side of it came into play probably about 5-6 years ago. Primarily, this was put together to go in as a stronger unit to sell grapes individually, and that was essentially the goal. And then there was an opportunity to go, well, if we can't sell the grapes for that amount of money, maybe we could make the wine for the grower and sell that, and then they'd make more that way. So I guess it's just creating an extra opportunity. So from that, it is still like it's the property of the grower. It may be an individual product from the grower, or it may be a blend of it, but that percentage, is still owned by them. So we might put it together with something else and it might make more money, and then that gets spread out through whoever's ownership of that product is. So really bypasses that that corporate, we'll buy that fruit off you and that's it sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah. So what was that? What was their best option before this? Pre-sell at a fixed rate, depending on what the final product looked like and conditions. Was that the alternative?
Yeah, well, initially the option was like sell it as fruit. If the fruit doesn't sell, then it stays on the vine or it gets chopped on the ground. And the wine part of it gave the grower the opportunity to, still it has risk involved. At the time, the bulk market was a different beast back then to what it is now. And we could speculate a bit more, obviously with things going on export-wise and domestically. It's changed a bit. So now the winemaking arm has developed to work in cohesion and have a set market to go to, where the model is still the same. The grower still owns the wine, but then it actually has a market to go to, and from that, this next brand has developed, I suppose. Give some, confidence.
I suppose, Marnie, there's a lot of potential cost savings for individual growers in terms of winemaking by using the cooperative model. So, you like combine infrastructure and things like that. So how does that side of it work?
Well, basically, we take care of all of that. So we have a processing facility, and the costs that are involved with that are incorporated into the cost of per litre. The grower is still the producer, so there is that small cost of producing it, and then what we do is calculate that out, and because we go in as a group, as a larger number as well, the costs of that are greatly reduced. So it really works out quite well, and in most cases we can sort of make the money that way. But cost per litre is incorporated into that, and so we value both out and give the options both to the grower. So.
And are some of the growers making wine for themselves? Are some of them on selling?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them are. They have their own producer license. So they sort of take that on. So they have the producer's license, so they still own the wine. And then, but some of them are making on the side, they might take some of that wine for themselves. I mean, a good example, one of the original founders of the WineGrapes was Paxton Wines, and he was on the board. And obviously, he has developed the Paxton brand, but he's still very much a part of the group. So, yeah.
Okay. And look, on today's edition of Small Business Banter Radio, we're talking with Marnie Roberts from WineGrapes, wine grower and champion of the cooperative model. You quickly mentioned some of the current or referenced some of the current challenges we have with exporting wine.
Mm-hmm.
Globalization, how does this smaller scale mesh, or does it mesh with what was for a long time a global looking wine industry that wanted to export? And is that still on the cards in a different way, or is it are we reimagining how wine is grown and sold?
Yeah, I think we are reimagining. I think the idea of making a product in the hope it will sell on the market and take that risk are far too great. I think now people are purposely going out and sort of setting up or pre-sale or setting up these relationships with export markets or internally that they know they've got a bit more security in what they're selling. I think the days of, just crushing a few thousand tons to make wine in the hopes that it'll sell at China and just going to trade shows and all that, I think that's too much of a risk now, especially for a group such as this. So building up that relationship is ever more vital. So, I mean, there's only so much the UK can take on.
Yeah.
They'll get flooded in the next couple of months, and there's a lot of big players out there that can swing in with their pricing and quality. And so you've got to build up. The relationship part of it's really important. So, yeah.
It's in a recent discussion we had Warwick Powell, who's an adjunct professor up at in Queensland Uni, I think it was. He was talking about the beef industry in particular using blockchain technology to help validate and verify, paddock to plate, and so in turn really enabling producers to charge a premium because they could account for where the animal was grown and right through to landing on a plate somewhere else. So is that a with smaller producers now for you? Are we getting even more granular on that? Where wine is grown and the story around it?
I think so. I think it goes hand in hand. I mean, everyone loves a good story. And if you don't have a story, especially with wine's so, arty-farty and thought of in this regard anyway, and you drink a glass of wine, and the more you drink, the more, deep in thought
the more
you might
arty
get.
It gets,
yeah. So it's always good to have that story with it. But there are some people, that I know that are talking about innovation of putting a chip of a type of thing into the cap, the screw cap of the wine, and having that as security so that they can scan that and they know that that's actually where it's come from, so that they can't. That's less chance of it being
messed with.
Yeah. So, or copied.
Yeah.
So
that's a big issue.
One of the things that's just springing to my mind, and it sort of was touched on before as well, is the benefits to the actual local communities of having the cooperative sort of model working in and around their areas. How do you find that the local communities benefit by having this sort of process, as distinct from the more traditional competitive type growing, selling type model?
I think it gives the community more power. You give more power to the individual grower and as a group as well. And that it creates this belief and this, positive reinforcement in the community as well. I think the biggest issue in a lot of small communities is you always feel like you're just trudging on, and that mental health part of it's really hard as well. So not only seeing the financial part of it going back into the town, but you're also seeing this belief and this faith in what they're doing, and this ongoing, we want to keep growing the best we can because we can see it's a positive effect, we can see where it's going, and we know that we're looked after. So
So can you see really big differences between community areas that may have done this? And the reason I'm asking the question is more for the other regional communities that we're broadcasting to, that may be thinking about how they might be able to increase their particular communities. I mean, we've had obviously bushfires, we've had floods, we've had droughts, we've had COVID, we've had all of these different things impacting, and regional communities are the ones seem to get hit hardest. And I'm just wondering whether there might be some opportunities here for other communities and other industries to be looking at your model and how they can actually get things happening.
Yeah, I think it's something to really look at. I mean, it's funny you talk about, not funny, but the bushfires and then the rain that they've had up in New South Wales, for instance. And so they've had 2 years of nothing, no crops. And that doesn't really make it a very viable industry or very viable thing to look at. And we've been contacted as well because we're together a pot of resource that can pull from South Australia, the entire region. And I think, with that one contact that can then all right, shoot it off to that person or to that person. And I think that there's real, it's quite valid to look at working as a group, as a unit. We have our winemakers associations, but you need to be on the front foot a bit more.
We're perhaps a bit more reliant on each other internally in Australia now, and recognise these borders are, we've got to help out.
Yeah.
One of the key things that we were interested in discussing, Marnie, loved chatting about the what we've chatted about, but the day-to-day opportunities and challenges and difficulties around setting up a cooperative and then managing a cooperative on an ongoing basis. I'm not sure exactly what your role is within the cooperative, but can you talk about it's a business model and it seems to suit probably a lot of industries. It seems to fit well with regional communities because there's it ties everybody together. But what are some of the practicalities of setting up and then managing a cooperative on an ongoing basis?
I'd be prepared to drive a lot. So that I think I've clocked up about 30,000 kilometres in the past few months. Because you are regional, you can do a lot, with technology and contacting and the phone and things like that. But you need to have a group that has their sections, and you need to be able to go out, see the growers, see the fruit through the whole process. I think Australia is such a big continent, So yesterday I drove for 7 hours down to Langhorne Creek and back to look at wines and get everything happening. And I think the reality of something like this is probably just the logistics of distance.
Yeah. And I chatted to you and I thought, what a great road trip. And then I realized you probably do it every week or two. So, but at the level of managing the cooperative, you've got 100 growers. How are decisions made about, managing the cooperative? I'm just trying to understand, it's different to, if you're in your own business, you do what you want. In a cooperative, there are obligations and responsibilities and rules and guidelines, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, there is a board.
Okay.
There is a board that sits and they have annual general meetings, and there are certain requirements that you need to fulfill to be a part of the co-op. And there's also key account managers, I suppose, that manage certain sections of the regions and then manage that process. And we all sort of intertwine. So there's probably, on the board, there's about, I think, 6 or 7 board members. And within the actual business itself, there's, I'm just counting, 7 of us.
Yeah.
And I'm the only winemaker, so I'm the winemaking arm of it. And I work with those other 7 people, there's three people that work within certain groups of growers, and then there's a general manager, and we kind of pull all that together. So there is some structure in there.
Yeah. And reporting, like out to you're reporting, you've got corporate obligations, but also communicating what's going on with the cooperative to all of the members.
Yeah. No, the board reporting and communication of everything where we're at to is vital, because if we don't have that transparency, then how do you get the faith in what you're doing and the commitment from the grower? So there's no hidden walls, and we go out and we do visit a fair bit, but there are key members that drive that and are responsible for putting that together.
And presumably there's quite a few that are, don't get involved in wine growing, grape growing, wine making, and they're just there to, it's a form of a business structure that needs to be managed. Do you see it having application more broadly in other industries for other regional communities? Would you endorse the cooperative model?
I think I would, as long as there's a strong ethos and driving force that's laid out to make it fair for everyone, because you always, with these things, you get the growers that are more prominent and have more money or stronger or whatever. So you need to make it a fair playing ground for everyone, and you need to have the key people in place that keep that structure going. So there still needs, even though it's a group, there still needs to be structure, and there still needs to be rules to follow, I suppose.
Yeah, and you talked about having an ethos in there. Is that going right back to the beginning and saying this cooperative is set up for these reasons, and this is our purpose? Is that what you're hinting at there?
Yeah, I guess ultimately the goal is we work for the grower and we do the best that we can. So there's a few services that are offered, whether it's so the actual WineGrapes company within the collective, whether it's help manage your vineyard, or manage sale of the fruit, or harvesting, or if you want the wine, make wine from your fruit. So it's about creating options and opportunities so the grower can get the best, because ultimately it's we work for the grower and we have to give them the best return.
Yeah. Okay. Longer term, do you see that's you've broken down some of the day-to-day challenges individual vineyards might have. Do you see that as a bit perhaps a pathway to attract more growers in, because there is those resources and support available through the rest of the grower network?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always encourage other members to join, and I think that's why we encourage people to talk within the community and let them know that the faith in the business model is as such that gives them a bit more confidence to growing fruit. So as a grower, there's nothing worse than spending a whole year growing something with that uncertainty. I mean, there's always an element of uncertainty, but if you can go, that's committed to that and it's bought and sold and there's more options, that's always a good thing. Options are always a good thing.
Yeah, a bit more support than we don't like the quality of the fruit, so we're not going to buy it. It can be pretty harsh, can't it?
Well, I've seen it firsthand where the big company might come out and they haven't been there all year, and the fruit's nearly ripe, and they're like, we don't actually need it. It's not what we need. It's not up to the quality, and then what do you do? Who have you got to lean on? And that still happens sometimes. And some of the growers within the collective, that happens too. And then we go, all right, we'll find a home for it, because you've got this network now.
So I think South Australia is still the biggest producer of grapes in Australia. Is that?
Yep.
Is that, yeah. We're coming up to our time, unfortunately, but where do you see the wine industry heading to over the next 5 or 10 years? And is it an industry that you see a lot of promise in, a lot of albeit a different perhaps industry than it is or has been?
God, that's a loaded question. That's a big one.
You've got 35 seconds.
Goodness.
No, you can take as much time.
No, I think the industry has growth. I think it has strengths. It's been interesting, with obviously the loss of the Chinese export, how people have reacted. I do think there's this imbalance at the moment of where fruit or where wine is ultimately going to go to, and there's this unknown. But a lot of people still have faith and drive in it. I mean, we've taken in more fruit, and it does make you a little bit more worried. But as long as the quality's there, and you're prepared to know where your limits are and what you need and what you require, then there's still growth. I don't think the growth will be huge, but I still think there will be growth. I think it's just a case of readjusting what you expect back from it for the next few years. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe it might tend to more of that smaller producers, like localized. Marnie, we really appreciate your time today on Small Business Banter. It's a fascinating discussion about the wine industry, but as I said, the key to us in terms of the audience that we talk to is looking for different ways to do business, and the cooperative model has been around a long time. But as you know, I think we're all agreeing it's very appropriate and very timely, and so hopefully people will take from that something and consider that for their own industry. So we really appreciate your time, Marnie.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to talking to you guys again sometime.
All right, Marnie. Take care. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. Anthony and I continue to be inspired by bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact Anthony or myself, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on both Facebook and Instagram. Anthony and I would love you to tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.